At 62, Johnny Depp has finally broken his silence about a secret he has kept for more than 4 decades. It's something no one ever expected him to reveal, not about the iconic pirate, not about the eerie scissors that haunted the big screen, not about his teenage years as a high school dropout who rode around in an old truck with his band, not about his eccentric life in Hunter S. Thompson's basement, surrounded by barrels of gunpowder and creepy text messages that made a courtroom gasp. In October 2024, Johnny Depp stunned Hollywood by announcing a solo art exhibition, not to show, but to reveal. It was the first time he had revealed a part of himself, raw, vulnerable, and unlike any character he had ever portrayed on screen. No longer the makeup or the scripted lines, Johnny appears as he is, unfiltered by the cinematography, unconstrained by the industry's stereotypes. And in just a few moments, it will all come out, raw, emotional, and completely unexpected. The portraits Johnny Depp painted in his solo exhibition not only reveal the artist's soul beneath the makeup, but also help explain why Disney executives once suspected he was drunk on set, and why, after all, Johnny was the one who saw the truth about a problem the world had long misunderstood. Johnny's journey did not begin in the spotlight. He was born on June 9, 1963, in Owensboro, Kentucky, into a working-class family. His mother, Betty Sue Palmer, was a waitress who worked hard for the family. His father, John Christopher Depp, was an absentee civil engineer. The family moved frequently, more than 20 times, before settling in Miramar, Florida. Johnny's childhood was a tumultuous one, marked by arguments and tension. At age 15, when his parents divorced, he faced an irreparable emotional breakdown. He later confessed that his mother was the cruelest person I've ever known. Yet, in the midst of that ruin, a quiet fire was lit. The fire of art. At the age of 15, Johnny made a bold decision. He dropped out of school to pursue music. He joined the Kids, a passionate garage rock band. They opened for legends like Iggy Pop, subsisted on cheap meals, and slept in their old van. They didn't live for comfort. They lived to be themselves. In 1983, Johnny married makeup artist Lori Ann Allison and moved to Los Angeles. They had a fragile musical dream and hoped to change their lives. To make ends meet, he took on every job, including selling ballpoint pens over the phone, a job that made him feel like he was losing himself. But it was Lori who opened a fateful turn. She introduced him to a friend actor, Nicolas Cage. Cage saw something special in Johnny, a quiet charm, a look that held something unspoken. He suggested that Johnny try acting. Johnny was initially uninterested, but eventually reluctantly agreed to meet with an agent and then audition for A Nightmare on Elm Street. Interestingly, he was only going to go with a friend, but he caught the eye of director Wes Craven's daughter, who remarked, "He looked like he had stepped out of a dream." Johnny got the role of Glenn, the boy who is swallowed by a bed in one of the most iconic horror scenes in cinema history. The film was released in November 1984, grossing over $25 million despite being produced for only $1.8 million. Johnny Depp officially stepped out of the shadows and into the Hollywood spotlight, but the challenges were not over. In 1985, the band broke up. His first marriage also fell apart. His passion for music, once everything, was now an echo. Johnny was at a crossroads. Cling to the past or move into a new, unfamiliar world. He chose acting, and that choice opened up a brilliant path. In 1987, at the age of 24, Johnny was cast as Tom Hansen in the TV series 21 Jump Street, replacing Jeff Yagger. Overnight, Johnny Depp's name swept across America. He became a youth icon, not only because of his attractive appearance, but also because of the depth in which he portrayed thorny topics such as drugs, violence, and the disorientation of youth. And that was just the opening chapter in the legendary story of an artist who never accepted being defined by a stereotype. Johnny Depp could have enjoyed the glory of fame, being adored by millions of fans, becoming the golden face of television. But the reality was quite the opposite. He hated fame. It made him feel suffocated, as if he were being sold like a prepackaged commodity. The characters he played on screen became so stilted, boring, and lacking in depth that Depp himself began to rebel, even deliberately destroying movie trailers just to be dropped from the project. While the world was cheering, he just wanted to escape that gilded cage. And he did, in a way no one expected. In 1990, Johnny Depp took the initiative to star in Cry Baby, a daring satire directed by John Waters. Not because of the flashy role, but because it was a public rebellion against the teen idol image that Hollywood tried to pin on him. Waters said he cast Depp after seeing his face plastered all over teen magazines at a supermarket. With Cry Baby, Depp shattered the Hollywood heartthrob image that he never felt he belonged to. The film was not a commercial success, but over time it became a classic, and most of all marked the first strong statement. Johnny Depp did not play by Hollywood's rules. That same year, he had a big breakthrough when he transformed into Edward Scissorhands, a strange character with scissors hands living alone in a castle, just wanting to be loved. In his first role with Tim Burton, Depp barely needed to speak. Just through his eyes and expressions, he conveyed Edward's pain, loneliness, and fragile beauty. The film was a commercial and artistic success, earning over $80 million and transforming Johnny Depp from the title of teen idol to become a real artist. From that point on, Depp refused safe roles. He chose the path of difference characters who were quirky, eccentric, sometimes to the point of confusing audiences. He once declared, "I will never return to television. I would rather pump gas." For him, cinema was not about pleasing the masses, but about telling the truth inside art. At the same time, his personal life was no less turbulent. After his first marriage broke up, he entered into a deep relationship with actress Sherilyn Fenn, with whom he had appeared in 21 Jump Street. The two were engaged, but then broke up. Not long after, he proposed to Jennifer Grey after only 2 weeks of dating, another short-lived engagement that ended not long after. The pressure of fame and image that he always fought against seemed to make every relationship fragile. Then came the iconic love affair, Johnny Depp and Winona Ryder. They met in 1989 at the premiere of Great Balls of Fire and fell in love at first sight. Within 5 months, they were engaged. Depp even had the words, "Winona Forever," tattooed on his arm, a declaration of immortality. Although the relationship ended in 1993, it is still remembered as one of the most passionate Hollywood romances of the early 90s. In 1994, Depp took on the role of Ed Wood, once dubbed the worst director of all time. But he did not make the character a joke. Instead, he brought Ed to life as a gentle, optimistic, and extremely lovable person. He once shared that the character was inspired by Ronald Reagan and the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. The black and white film is like a love letter to strange, misunderstood souls, and also marks a strong bond between Depp and director Tim Burton. In 1999, they teamed up again for Sleepy Hollow, where Depp played Ichabod Crane, a shy, awkward, arachnophobic investigator. Initially, the studio wanted a handsome actor in the Brad Pitt mold, but Depp had other ideas. He wanted a classic look, reminiscent of Sherlock Holmes and Angela Lansbury. Although some details were too eccentric and rejected by the studio, the film still retained Depp's characteristic style, strange, mysterious, but no less charming. Sleepy Hollow earned more than $27 million in its opening weekend and won an Oscar for art design. In 2005, Depp took on the role of Willy Wonka in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. But this was not the friendly, funny Wonka that audiences knew. His version was cold, distant, and somewhat mysterious. Depp was inspired by children's TV hosts and Anna Wintour's hair to build the character's image. Despite comparisons to Michael Jackson, he has denied them. This version has created a deep divide. Some praise it for its emotional depth. Others find it confusing. But one thing is undeniable. Once again, Johnny Depp has refused to take the easy way out and has remained faithful to the path that only he dares to walk. Some consider Johnny Depp's portrayal of Willy Wonka a masterpiece. Others find it strange and elusive. But love him or hate him, no one can deny the special appeal he brought to the character. The film grossed nearly $476 million worldwide and earned Depp a prestigious Golden Globe nomination. With his distant eyes, unique voice, and unique style, Depp's Wonka became an unforgettable figure, far beyond any stereotype that had come before. That same year, Depp continued to prove his incredible versatility when he voiced Victor Van Dort in Tim Burton's emotional stop-motion animated film Corpse Bride. He played Wonka by day and recorded Victor by night. With just his voice, Depp conveyed confusion, fear, innocence, and maturity, all in one fragile and pitiful character. Corpse Bride not only touched the hearts of audiences, but also received an Oscar nomination, affirming Depp's powerful voice-acting talent. In 2010, he returned as the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland, a crazy but emotional character. Under Burton's hands, the film became a box office phenomenon, earning over $1 billion worldwide, the director's biggest commercial success. 2 years later, they reunited for Dark Shadows, where Depp transformed into 200-year-old vampire Barnabas Collins. Although met with mixed reviews, this role continued to affirm Depp's ability to transform boldly and without limits. One of the most special roles in his career was Hunter S. Thompson in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. But for Depp, this was not just acting. It was a real-life bond. He lived with Thompson, learned to dress like him, and even had him shave his head to get into character. Their relationship was so deep that Depp personally carried out Thompson's last wish, to shoot his ashes into the sky with a cannon. It was no longer acting. It was a blend of friendship, respect, and art. In Donnie Brasco, Depp showed inner depth as an FBI agent who infiltrates the mafia world, where the line between duty and personal feelings becomes blurred. Similarly, in Blow, he played drug lord George Jung, a man who once stood at the peak of fame and then fell into the abyss of loneliness. Depp researched carefully, even using Jung's own words to recreate the tragedy of a person. But the biggest, most iconic turning point was when Johnny Depp donned the triangular helmet and transformed into Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean, 2003. With his slouching gait and drunken rocker persona, many thought he was ruining the film. But Depp was adamant. Either accept Jack Sparrow the way he is, or go for someone else. They chose him, and the world had to admit it was the right decision. Depp received his first Oscar nomination, won a SAG award, and Jack Sparrow became an instant pop culture icon. By 2006, the sequel, Dead Man's Chest, was released and set an unprecedented record, grossing $135.6 million in its first week, surpassing the $400 million mark in just 45 days. Johnny Depp was no longer just a beloved actor. He was a global phenomenon, an irreplaceable icon of 21st century cinema. Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End has grossed over $1 billion worldwide, a feat no one thought a pirate movie could achieve. But it wasn't just the special effects or the story that made it so great. It was the irresistible appeal of Johnny Depp's Jack Sparrow. When the third installment opened, it was playing in more than 4,300 theaters on some 11,500 screens across North America, an unprecedented number. In just 4 days, the film grossed nearly $140 million. Despite competing with blockbusters like Spider-Man 3 Inches and Shrek the Third, Pirates still held the box office crown. When it ended its run, its global gross hit $963 million, setting a Memorial Day record for years to come. Even as the sequels began to slow down, audiences still flocked to theaters just to see Jack. In 2011, On Stranger Tides opened to $90 million in the U.S. and was a huge hit internationally, grossing $256 million in its first weekend, the biggest global debut at the time. It quickly crossed the $1 billion mark, making it the fastest Disney film to do so in history. In 2017, Dead Men Tell No Tales, while not recreating its former glory, still grossed nearly $800 million, enough to prove that Jack Sparrow had transcended the character and become a pop culture icon. However, around 2010, cracks began to appear. Depp's longtime agent described it as watching two different people, the professional Johnny of the past and the uncontrollable Johnny who was often late and causing delays in filming. On the set of Dead Men Tell No Tales in Australia, the crew even had to station a guard outside his house just to make sure he woke up on time. When he woke up, the code word was, "The eagle has landed." The situation became worse as alcohol and drugs crept deeper into his life. Shooting schedules stretched, stability was disrupted, and behind-the-scenes tensions mounted. Then came his contentious relationship with Amber Heard, which began when they worked together on The Rum Diary in 2009. Although they were both in other relationships at the time, the connection was undeniable. They went public with their relationship in 2012 and had a private wedding in 2015. But after just 15 months, Heard filed for divorce and a restraining order, accusing Depp of domestic abuse. The images and accusations quickly went viral, while Depp denied them. The divorce immediately became a protracted legal battle, drawing countless debates from the public and global media. The climax came in 2018 when Heard wrote an editorial in the Washington Post, claiming to be a victim of domestic violence. Although she did not name anyone, everyone understood she was referring to Depp. The result? He lost the role of Jack Sparrow and many big contracts. Depp then filed a $50 million lawsuit against Heard, claiming that the article had seriously damaged his career. Heard countersued, and the battle lasted for years with a series of evidence, text messages, and personal photos being brought to the public one after another. No one knew who was right and who was wrong, only that the images of both were caught in a never-ending vortex. A shocking incident occurred in Australia in 2015 during the filming of Dead Men Tell No Tales. After a fierce argument, Depp's middle finger was severed. He said he was injured by a bottle of wine that Heard threw. Heard denied the accusations, claiming that Depp had inflicted the injury himself. The photo of the bloody finger became a symbol of a tumultuous relationship. The couple officially divorced in 2017. Depp agreed to pay Heard $7 million, an amount she said she would donate to charity. However, subsequent allegations suggested that she had not kept her promise, and that some of that money may have come from Elon Musk. Several witnesses who worked at their apartment confirmed that Heard regularly picked Musk up at night, even though she was still legally married to Depp. Elevator cameras revealed further evidence, making the case even more complicated. Once one of the world's most beloved movie stars, Johnny Depp was gradually drawn into a spiral of controversy and litigation. His once glorious career and reputation were now covered with clouds. Clouds that to this day have not really lifted. It felt like a betrayal, and more painfully, it happened right in front of Johnny Depp during the tense trial. Private messages that he had kept hidden were now read out loud to the public. They contained the rage and bitterness he had tried to suppress. He had mocked Elon Musk with the nickname Mollusk, sent angry messages to his agent, talked about cutting all ties with Musk, and hoped that Heard would get her karma. Depp did not deny it, even admitting that he was not proud of those words. But they offered a stark portrait of a man at rock bottom, watching his life fall apart in front of the world. Then another revelation made things even more confusing. After starting a relationship with Musk in 2017, Heard texted him that she had never truly loved him, that it was all a way to fill the void, a temporary fix for the pain. Elon Musk, it turns out, was just a distraction. Those confessions made the public start to question the real motive behind all the stories. Heard once announced that she would donate the entire $7 million from the divorce to charity, and the public believed it. But then the truth was revealed. Only $1.3 million was sent, mostly from Elon Musk, some from Depp himself. Musk later admitted that he had transferred money on her behalf so that she would keep her promise. It seemed like an effort to maintain a good image, but it became the piece that cracked the whole humanitarian picture that Heard had built. In 2023, Walter Isaacson's biography of Elon Musk revealed more depth to the relationship. Musk called it the most painful experience of his life. His brother bluntly called Heard a nightmare. Isaacson described the relationship as a dark tornado where love and hurt intertwined. Still, there were moments of passion. Heard once spent 2 months dressing up as Mercy from the game Overwatch, just because it was Musk's favorite character. It was a strange, twisted love. "I'm a fool," Musk once said, "especially when I'm in love." Heard later admitted, Elon loves fire, but sometimes it burns him. Once one of Hollywood's highest-paid stars, Johnny Depp reached the heights of his fame, earning $20 million per film, not to mention post-production bonuses that could reach $55 million. But behind the spotlight came an unexpected fall. In 2017, Depp filed a lawsuit against his financial management team of nearly 2 decades, accusing them of losing $650 million. He said they borrowed money without warning, missed tax payments, and collected more than $28 million in service fees without proper contracts. By the time he realized the truth, his finances were in shambles. The lawsuit dragged on for months and was finally settled quietly in July 2018, just weeks before Depp faced an even bigger public legal battle. But the troubles didn't stop there. That April, 2 of Depp's closest bodyguards sued him for poor working conditions, being forced to work overtime, not being paid properly, and even having to care for him, drive him, and protect him when he was intoxicated. They argued that their role was more than just protection. They were trying to keep Depp from completely breaking down. Then in July, another blow came. Greg Brooks, a location manager on the film City of Lies, sued Depp for assault on set. Brooks said Depp, who smelled of alcohol, punched him twice in the ribs and threatened him with $100,000 if he punched him back. Multiple witnesses at the scene confirmed the incident. The film was delayed. Depp's image continued to crack. The lawsuit dragged on until 2022, only to be quietly settled, days before a new trial was due to begin, and Depp could not bear another scandal. But Johnny Depp didn't just want to survive. He wanted to be reborn. And he chose art as his path back. In October 2024, he surprised everyone with his solo exhibition, A Bunch of Stuff, in Manhattan, with more than 70 works, many of them created over decades. The paintings were expressive, raw but honest, capturing the soul of a man who had gone through turmoil and chose to paint his pain rather than bury it. More than 10,000 people visited in the first week alone. Many people thought that painting was just a passing hobby of a star, but critics were forced to reconsider. In every line they saw depth, saw torment, saw a true talent being liberated. The opening night attracted both the art and film worlds. Not just an exhibition, but a declaration. Johnny Depp is back, not as a fallen icon, but as an artist rewriting his own story, with hands that once trembled but never stopped creating. Welcome to our channel, where behind-the-scenes stories are revealed in the most honest and emotional way. In 1977, amid the bright spotlights and endless laughter on set, Carol Burnett was at the peak of her career. Hundreds of episodes had brought joy to millions of viewers, but there was one particular episode that she, the scriptwriter and star, never wanted to watch again. An episode buried in her memory because the pain it brought was too great to face. Why did a comedy legend avoid her own work? What happened behind the scenes that made her turn away forever? Join us on a journey to discover that emotional secret, a story that will never calm your heart. Carol Burnett was born in San Antonio, Texas, and from an early age, her life was shrouded in darkness and pain. Both of her parents were heavy drinkers. Her father worked in a movie theater but never held a job for long. Her mother, cold, distant, and almost completely absent emotionally. Eventually, both died of complications related to alcoholism. From an early age, Carol felt a strong sense of abandonment, that the people who should have loved and protected her most chose alcohol over being with her. The world around her was cold, uncertain, and threatening. But in the midst of the chaos, Carol found an escape: laughter. It was not just entertainment, but a shield that protected her young soul from premature destruction. When her parents died, Carol was adopted by her grandmother, Mabel White. They moved to Hollywood hoping for a fresh start, but what awaited them was a harsh reality. The two lived in a cramped room surrounded by people who had lost their way, addicts, mentally ill, lost souls clinging to the last rays of hope. With only $20 a week, they barely made it through the day. Dreams seemed like a luxury. Yet in the midst of all the deprivation, Carol's grandmother gave her something priceless: unconditional love. It was from this love that Carol felt safe for the first time, protected, cared for, and allowed to dream. In the harsh circumstances, her imagination became a refuge for the little girl. Carol created an imaginary twin named Karen, a beautiful, radiant, confident, and always smiling girl. She played the role so well that even her tenants believed Karen really existed. Carol changes her outfit, her hair, runs up the fire escape, and returns with a completely different demeanor. A moment later, she's Carol again, quiet, dreamy. It's not just a testament to her natural acting talent, but also a true reflection of the desperation all around her. Where people are so broken they're willing to believe anything that makes their lives feel less burdensome, if only for a moment. But not all escapes are illusions. Every weekend, Carol and her grandmother save up their pennies to go to the movies. A couple of tickets cost 25 cents, more than 10% of their income. But for Carol, a few hours in the theater is a whole other universe. There's light, music, order, love, and hope. It's where she can dream. But as the final credits roll, reality comes crashing back in. Her family couldn't afford toilet paper, so they quietly stole it from movie theater restrooms. They didn't do it out of shame, but because they had no other choice. At just 7 years old, Carol Burnett knew what hunger was. Hunger for food, hunger for love, hunger for a place to belong, and above all, hunger for a reason to hope. One day, in an old movie theater, Johnny Weissmuller's signature Tarzan scream suddenly rang out, shocking young Carol Burnett. The sound didn't just hit her ears, it went straight to her soul. From that moment on, Carol began practicing the scream obsessively, imitating every pitch, every breath, not to impress, but simply because she couldn't resist its allure. Little did she know she was practicing her voice like a professional. To Carol, it was child's play. But it was the game that quietly honed the first tool in her comedic arsenal that would later become her trademark. Every time she screamed on stage, the audience would laugh and applaud. A moment of childhood impetuosity became iconic. When Carol graduated from high school, she had a seemingly simple dream: to become a journalist. Her mother had dreamed of becoming a writer, and Carol wanted to follow her dream. She set UCLA as her goal, but when it came time to pay the tuition, just $50, Carol realized she didn't have the money. In today's money, that would be nearly $600. For many people, that would be the end of the world. For Carol, it was almost the end of her dream. Then something magical happened. A stranger, no name, no address, walked in and paid her entire tuition. No strings attached, no questions asked. A small gesture, but enough to change the trajectory of her life. At UCLA, Carol enrolled in journalism. But then, an elective theater class changed everything. The first time she walked into the classroom, something inside her snapped. On stage, she was no longer the poor, wounded, shy girl she was. She was the most vibrant version of herself. Her professors saw it. Her classmates saw it. Carol could sing, she could act, and most of all, she could make people laugh. And for the first time, she knew she belonged. She abandoned journalism for the theater. At the end of her freshman year, Carol was named the department's most promising newcomer. It was more than a title. It was confirmation. That she wasn't crazy to dream big. That her dream wasn't so far away. The title led to opportunities, mentors, and a newfound confidence that Carol wasn't just an aspiring student, but a star in the making. In 1954, during her junior year, Carol worked as a tour guide for 65 cents an hour. At a party in San Diego, she slipped a small sandwich into her pocket, intending to take it home to her grandmother. A gentleman approached her and struck up a conversation. He wasn't a producer, he wasn't a director. He was just a millionaire shipbuilder from La Jolla. When Carol shared her dream of going to New York, he quietly offered her and her boyfriend $1,000 on 3 conditions: not reveal his identity, use the money only to go to New York, and if successful, return to help others. His wife later revealed that he had received help in his life, and he believed in passing on the torch. He helped people at gas stations, restaurants, anyone who needed a chance. With $2,000 in hand, Carol and Don Soroyan left UCLA and headed to New York. She had never left Texas before, but she didn't hesitate. "I didn't know enough to be scared," she later recalled. They rented a room at the Algonquin Hotel for $9 a night, more than they could afford. Money was running out. At one point, Carol called home in tears, and her family begged her to come back. Just as she was about to give up, she heard a news report about a storm coming. It was called Carol. It was a sign to her, a message from fate. Carol stayed, and soon she found a place to stay at the Rehearsal Club, a boarding house for aspiring young women. For $18 a week, she had a bed in a room shared with 4 other actresses, a closet, a bathroom. Not fancy, but for her it was heaven. She'd slept on a couch, now a bed. A hope was more than enough. The boarding house was filled with sounds: dialogue, singing, laughter, the rustle of curlers in the early morning. By day, Carol auditioned. By night, she worked as a hat checker at a club. The work wasn't glamorous, but it was real. And most of all, it was her first step toward the spotlight of her life. One spring evening in New York, in a rundown boarding house for aspiring artists, Carol and her roommates did the unthinkable. They created a show called the Rehearsal Club Review. They boldly sent out invitations to agents, producers, and even the biggest names in the entertainment industry. Unexpectedly, the legendary Marlene Dietrich actually showed up. And that night, the first door to Carol's dream opened. The first big break came from something no one had expected: a love song for John Foster Dulles, the notoriously stiff and aloof Secretary of State. The song, written by Ken Welch, was a whimsical joke, a hilariously silly satire. But that's why it worked. Carol performed the song with a playful grace that made the audience laugh, and suddenly, it became her first trademark. Soon after, she was invited to appear on major shows such as The Jack Paar Show, then The Ed Sullivan Show. When she first stepped on the Ed Sullivan stage, Carol was so nervous that her legs were shaking. But within minutes, the laughter was non-stop. Her charm and stage presence were undeniable. When she returned to the show, Carol continued to perform the Dulles song and a parody of Puppy Love. From an unknown name, Carol suddenly became a hot topic in the New York comedy scene. Her years of struggle began, but this time with a hopeful light. She got a small part on The Paul Winchell Show as a ventriloquist's girlfriend, a seemingly insignificant role, but a valuable stepping stone. Next came the sitcom Stanley with comedian Buddy Hackett. The show only lasted a year, but it was enough to propel Carol to the next level. And then came her big break: the lead role in the musical Once Upon a Mattress. The show was suddenly brought to Broadway from a small, humble stage. Carol played Princess Winifred, a clumsy, boisterous swamp princess who was the complete opposite of the fairy tale model. But that was what made the public fall in love with her. Carol received her first Tony nomination. 5 years after receiving the anonymous gift from the mysterious man, she and Don returned the entire $2,000. The man never responded. He kept his promise and quietly disappeared. By now, Carol was making $500 a week, a dream for a girl who used to hide bread in her purse. The amazing thing is that Once Upon a Mattress was never expected to be a success. It started as a summer camp experiment and was received coldly by critics. But the public was very different. They loved Carol, loved the raw, awkward, lifelike quality of her character. The show ran for more than 470 performances, changing theaters every few years. And when Carol left, it all fell apart. Her replacement lasted only 8 performances. Carol was no longer an actress. She was the life of the show. From there, she was cast on The Gary Moore Show. In 3 years, Carol went from rising star to a full-fledged television sensation. She won her first Emmy, and her comedic maid character quickly became a beloved icon across America. But the most valuable thing Carol took away from the show wasn't fame or awards. It was a lesson. Those unscripted quandas with Gary Moore taught her something profound. Genuine interaction with the audience is where the most laughter is born. The Gary Moore Show not only elevated Carol Burnett to stardom, it also launched big names like Don Knotts and Jonathan Winters. Over the course of nearly 2 decades, the show became an irreplaceable icon of American television. For Carol, it was a real school, where she learned about daring, emotion, timing, and most importantly, how to make people laugh. Not with tricks, but with heart. Once again, fate smiled on Carol Burnett. And this time, it happened right in the heart of the arts, Carnegie Hall. Initially, CBS was not entirely sure about having Carol do a special with Julie Andrews. Julie was still a new name to them, and Carol was a familiar face on television every week. It seemed like the idea would be shelved. But a moment in real life changed everything. After a promotional event, 2 CBS executives, Michael Dann and Oscar Katz, happened to see Carol struggling in the middle of the street trying to catch a cab home. "I might have to flag down a truck," she quipped charmingly. And as if the universe had concurred, a truck did pull up a few minutes later. The 2 men looked at each other and knew this wasn't just an opportunity. It was a sign they couldn't ignore. And they approved the show. Julie and Carol at Carnegie Hall was born and quickly became a phenomenon. The show won 3 prestigious awards, including an Emmy and a prestigious Rose d'Or. Columbia Records released the soundtrack album, and it shot straight to the Billboard charts. But all that glory was just a prelude to something much bigger. Because not long after, The Carol Burnett Show officially went on the air. And from that moment on, American television entered a whole new era. Carol Burnett did what the industry had never believed possible. She hosted her own variety show in an era when entertainment theater was still almost exclusively the domain of men. But she wasn't just the host. She was the soul of it, the breath, the heartbeat. Every week, tens of millions of American viewers watched her on their small screens, not just to laugh, but to feel. Because The Carol Burnett Show not only brought laughter, but also empathy, humanity, and an unusual optimism in tumultuous years. The show was not only a success, it changed the game. It was named one of Time's 100 Greatest Shows, ranked #17 on TV Guide and #23 by Variety. But numbers only tell the story. The show's real impact was in the way it reshaped television comedy. It was one of the first shows to do sketches in front of a live studio audience, a bold move that would set the precedent for legendary shows like Saturday Night Live. Carol was more than just a comedian or a TV star. She was a pioneer. As the first woman to take on a vaudeville empire, not by luck, but by sheer talent and grit, Carol Burnett opened the floodgates for generations of women to enter comedy, performance, and television, places they had never even dreamed of before. Whether it was a Monday night or a Saturday night, no matter how busy their lives were, people would still sit in front of the screen. Because they knew Carol would appear. With a smile, with talent, and above all, with the one thing that only those who have emerged from the shadows can bring: light. A light that softens the weariness of life, and reminds people that sometimes just a laugh can save the day. During its 11-year run, The Carol Burnett Show not only captured the hearts of audiences, it also carved its name into television history with 25 primetime Emmys, a number that would make Hollywood take its hat off. But what's most impressive isn't the quantity, but the depth. From writing, to music, to choreography, to the Best Variety Program category. There was no area where the show didn't reach its peak. Harvey Korman, an indispensable mainstay, took home 4 Emmys for his stellar supporting performances. Tim Conway, with his unique comedic style, also won 4, 3 for acting and 1 for writing. And even as the show entered its final season, it didn't go quietly. It exploded once more with a resounding win in the most prestigious category, Best Variety Program. And Carol Burnett? She wasn't just a host, she was an icon. She won the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Comedy or Musical for 2 years in a row. Her show dominated the People's Choice Awards for 3 years in a row. All of these achievements made The Carol Burnett Show a television royalty, a monument that few variety shows can even dream of reaching. But behind the scenes, it wasn't always all laughter and applause. During the 7th season, a seemingly small incident almost caused everything to fall apart. Harvey Korman, who had brought countless memorable moments, suddenly became grumpy and cold during rehearsals. Even when the show had friendly guests like Tim Conway and Petula Clark that week, the atmosphere was still heavy. Carol, known for her patience, couldn't keep quiet this time. After Friday's taping, she pulled Harvey aside and asked bluntly, "What's going on?" And the answer was like a knife. "I'm not having fun here anymore." Then he slammed the dressing room door in her face. That same evening, Carol called her agent and simply said, "Harvey Korman is fired." That seemed like the end of it. But then the weekend passed. Korman thought about it. He called Carol, asked to come back, and she agreed, on one condition. "On Monday morning, I want to see you skipping rope and whistling down the CBS hallway." And sure enough, that morning, the elevator opened, and Harvey Korman, the legendary comedian, stepped out, skipping rope and whistling. Carol laughed and made a sign to hang on his door, "Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky." Harvey stayed on until season 10, as if there had never been a crack. And Tim Conway? He was the unexpected unknown of the entire show. Tim has an unwritten rule: never let it all out in rehearsal. He saves the best, even the craziest, for the main stage in front of a real audience. When he steps on stage, no one, not even his co-stars, knows what's coming. It could be an improvisation no one saw coming, or a gag he's been secretly working on all week. "Tim never does the same thing twice," Harvey Korman once said. And it's that liveliness, the moments when Carol laughs so hard she can't speak, the scenes that are broken because the actors burst out laughing on air. That's why audiences love the show so much. Because they're not just watching a staged comedy routine. They're witnessing real people, real friendships, and a genuine love for the performing arts. Because in every laugh, there's a real world breathing. One of the most chaotic and unforgettable moments on The Carol Burnett Show came from the legendary sketch, The Family. In a seemingly familiar scene, Tim Conway suddenly began telling a bizarre story about a circus elephant. The story was long and drawn out, with no beginning or end, but the more it was told, the more absurdly funny it became. Carol Burnett, Vicki Lawrence, and Dick Van Dyke tried to get into character, but they all broke down one by one. As the story reached its peak of absurdity, Vicki, who always kept her cool, couldn't help herself and uttered the classic line, "Are you sure that story's over?" The studio erupted in laughter. Even Tim Conway, who rarely broke character, couldn't keep his face straight. It was a completely unscripted moment, but it became the soul of the show, real, vivid, and unrepeatable. But not all skits end with laughter. In 1977, The Carol Burnett Show did the unexpected. It made people cry. In a special episode of The Family, Carol played Eunice Higgins, a woman trapped in a dead-end life, drowning in unfulfilled dreams and mounting disappointments. Normally, The Family is a light-hearted satire, but this time, all the laughter is gone. No more exaggeration, no more jokes, just silence, truth, and raw hurt. In The Gong Show, Eunice believes that performing on a talent show will be her ticket out of her cagey life. But instead of being cheered on, she is mercilessly ridiculed by the judges, one of whom is none other than the famous host Alan Ludden. And when Carol Burnett takes on Eunice, there is no trace of the comedy queen left. There was only a small woman, tearful, standing precariously between the stage and life. The camera slowly moved in, the lights dimmed. No more music, no more laughter. Just a heavy silence, leaving the audience dumbfounded. Critics called it one of the greatest moments in American television, but Carol Burnett, who delivered the performance, never watched the episode again. In a 2010 interview, she admitted, "Eunice's pain was my pain, because it was real." Carol knew what it was like to be laughed at for pursuing a dream. She grew up poor, in the indifference of adults, in loneliness and deprivation. When she played Eunice, old wounds came flooding back, without acting, because they were memories. Carol later told Harper's Bazaar, "We're glad we did it, but the show isn't here to bring up pain. We're here to make people forget their troubles, at least for an hour a week." The episode, though, lives on. It paved the way for the 1982 TV movie Eunice, and then the sitcom Mama's Family. Although Carol left the project because she wasn't happy with the new direction, the original 1977 version is still considered one of the most heartfelt and moving moments ever aired. Carol Burnett didn't just make America laugh. She made people feel, and sometimes that's more valuable than laughter. Behind the bright lights and laughter that Carol Burnett brought to millions of audiences was a whole other world, full of hurt, conflict, and silent battles that could bring anyone down. It all started in college, when Carol met her first husband, Don Soroyan. They were young, ambitious, and both dreamed of the Broadway lights. Don was born in Omaha in 1928 and had a passion for the stage. They met at UCLA in 1952 and married 3 years later. But love, no matter how sincere, sometimes wasn't enough to overcome harsh realities. Don had a young daughter from a previous relationship, and her death changed him forever. While Carol's career grew, Don's career stagnated and the distance between them grew. They finally separated on Christmas Day, 1959, and divorced 3 years later. Don sank into depression and alcoholism, dying in 1990 at the age of 62. Taking his artistic dreams with him. Soon after, Carol met Joe Hamilton, a talented television producer who had masterminded the historic 1962 Carnegie Hall concert. Joe had 8 children before Carol. They married in 1963, worked together on The Carol Burnett Show, and raised a large family of 3 daughters, Carrie, Jody, and Erin. In 1965, they lost a child to miscarriage, a pain Carol rarely spoke of but never quite resolved. Their family, which appeared to be a model of happiness, was actually deeply flawed. Although Joe won 5 Emmys, the tension between work and personal life grew, leading to irreconcilable conflicts. In 1976, Carol faced an unexpected media battle. The National Enquirer published a false story, falsely accusing her of being drunk in a restaurant while sitting next to Henry Kissinger. For Carol, who had grown up with horrific memories of alcoholic parents, it was not just an insult to her reputation, but a stab in her own painful past. She filed a lawsuit, seeking $1.6 million in damages. The 5-year lawsuit exposed the unscrupulous tactics of the tabloid press. Witnesses testified that Carol was sober, but the story was published anyway. Although she eventually received only $200,000 on appeal, Carol wasn't fighting for money. She fought for the truth, and her victory helped change the way entertainment media operated. But Carol's greatest tragedy came not on stage or in the press, but in her own home. In the late 1970s, she discovered that her eldest daughter, Carrie, was just 13 years old and had fallen into a drug addiction. Cocaine, marijuana, psychedelic mushrooms, and tranquilizers. Carrie used them all to escape her mother's overwhelming shadow. In a later interview, Carrie said something that broke Carol's heart. "I took drugs to stop being Carol Burnett's daughter. I just wanted to be myself. No amount of accolades, awards, or applause could ease that pain. And from that moment on, Carol knew that the most important battle of her life was to be a mother." From 1976 to 1979, Carol Burnett watched as her beloved daughter Carrie spiraled deeper into drug addiction. Moving from one rehab facility to another, Carol clung to a fragile hope. At one point, Carrie ran away from a Texas rehab facility, and Carol, terrified, thought she had lost her daughter forever. At 17, Carrie finally got clean. But to get there, Carol had to make the most painful decision of her life, force her daughter into compulsory treatment. Carrie was angry with her mother, cutting off contact for more than a year. But Carol understood that sometimes love means being hated. She once said, "You have to love your children enough to let them hate you." When Carrie returned, they not only forgave each other, they found a deeper version of their mother-daughter bond. Carrie began her own career, making a splash with the Fame series and slowly establishing herself as an independent artist. Together, mother and daughter wrote, acted, and composed Hollywood Arms, based on Carol's own traumatic childhood. It was a living testament to love, creativity, and healing. But fate once again took away that hope. In 2002, Carrie died of pneumonia, a complication of lung cancer that had spread to her brain. She passed away at the age of 38 before she could see Hollywood Arms open. Carol was devastated, but she fought to continue because, "I owe it to Carrie," she said. Soon after, Carol's second marriage to Joe Hamilton fell apart. The stress of the show, Carrie's battle with addiction, and the pressures of home life took their toll. To protect their remaining children, they sent their two young daughters to Hawaii, away from the maelstrom of chaos. Despite the divorce, Joe maintained a close relationship with his children until his death from cancer in 1991. Carol thought she had no room for love, but then, in the late 1990s, at a performance in Long Beach, she met Brian Miller, a conductor 23 years her junior. The age difference didn't matter. They married in 2001 when Carol was 68. Carrie died 2 months later. Brian became a quiet but steady support during the darkest period of Carol's life. It was he who encouraged her to complete Hollywood Arms as a farewell to Carrie. They have been inseparable ever since. Thinking the loss was behind her, challenges came. Carol's youngest daughter, Erin, also struggled with addiction for nearly 2 decades. 8 rehab stays, 240 days of treatment, but still can't escape the darkness. In July 2020, Erin sent a suicide-threatening text message to her children, prompting police intervention. From there, Carol did what she's done all her life: stand up for herself. She sought legal guardianship of her grandson, Dylan, and the court granted it. She became a mother again, in the form of a grandmother. In 2022, at age 89, Carol stunned the world when she appeared in Better Call Saul. She played Marion, a sweet, vulnerable, yet sharp woman. In the climactic scene, Marion silently uses Ask Jeeves to expose Saul Goodman's true identity. She says just one sentence, "I trusted you." And when she pressed the panic button to hand Saul over, Carol Burnett, in a trembling human voice, left the audience speechless. Vince Gilligan, the show's creator, admits that he was deeply troubled by the scene where Saul might consider killing Marion. Because Carol Burnett is more than just an actress. She's a living icon. Carol doesn't just make people laugh, she makes people feel. And in a world filled with chaos, people like that, genuine, unyielding, and loving, are the lights that never go out. In 1997, Carol Burnett stunned the entertainment world when she won an Emmy for Outstanding Guest Actress in a Comedy Series. To many, it was a surprise, but to Carol it was confirmation that she was not only a legend of the golden age of television, but also an artist who could shine in any era. The vibrant physical comedy of the past had given way to a more refined, sharp style, humor distilled from experience, empathy, and skill honed over more than half a century. For 2 consecutive years, she was honored at the American Comedy Awards for seemingly small but profound roles. Those awards were just the tip of the iceberg of a career that included 25 Emmy nominations, a number that would make any actor admire her. As the 2000s began, Carol's voice became her primary medium. She ventured into the world of animation, bringing to life characters that children around the world loved. One of her most notable voice roles was in 2008's Horton Hears a Who, alongside Jim Carrey and Steve Carell. The film was a box office hit, grossing nearly $300 million worldwide, and Carol's distinctive voice was part of what made it so memorable. As early as 2001, she lent her voice to The Trumpet of the Swan alongside Reese Witherspoon. These animated roles were not only innovative, but also emotionally connected Carol to a whole new generation, audiences who had never seen her on stage, but who still felt the warmth, wit, and charm of her soulful voice. In the late 1990s, Carol returned to where she started, Broadway. She starred in Stephen Sondheim's Putting It Together at the Ethel Barrymore Theater. After 3 decades away from the stage, Carol still takes to the stage as if she's never left. A minor incident during a performance, her dress slipping off halfway down the stage, turned into a memorable improvisation. Without panicking, she turned the incident into a moment of humor and grace that had the entire audience laughing. That's Carol Burnett, fearless, graceful, and always ready to turn failure into a mark. Her subtlety in interpreting Sondheim's complex scores has earned her rave reviews from even the toughest critics. She doesn't just act, she soaks every word, every rhythm, every spotlight. And just when everyone thought Carol Burnett had it all, in 2024, at age 91, she wowed everyone once again with her appearance in Palm Royale on Apple TV+. She plays Norma Delacour, a powerful woman who is in a coma for most of the season, before suddenly waking up and becoming the center of all the drama. The role requires her to create a simulated language for someone who has just woken up, and Carol, as usual, improvises the whole thing. She doesn't just act, she crafts her role. Palm Royale premiered on March 20th, 2024, with an A-list cast including Kristen Wiig, Ricky Martin, Laura Dern, and Allison Janney. The show received 11 Emmy nominations, and Carol Burnett once again took center stage. For this role, she became the oldest actress ever nominated for an Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series. Not because of her age, but because of her timeless talent. And so, a new generation of viewers who had never seen the golden age of television were once again introduced to an immutable truth. Carol Burnett was more than an artist. She was a living testament to strength, to grace, to the ability to turn pain into light. She made us laugh, she made us cry, and she believed in the healing power of art, even when life was at its most tumultuous. Carol Burnett is more than a comedy legend. She is the embodiment of courage, kindness, and unwavering strength. She makes us laugh, hearty, heartwarming laughs, and then she makes us cry, not because of tragedy, but because of a heartfelt, simple honesty. From a girl raised in poverty with a Broadway dream to the first woman to rewrite the rules of national television, Carol has survived it all: pain, loss, family struggles, and moments of utter loneliness. But through it all, she stands, with a smile that never fades and a heart that never stops giving love. Carol shows us that gentleness is not weakness, but the greatest strength. That a laugh, no matter how small, can heal the deepest wounds. And that talent, when it comes from the heart, is never limited by age or time. If Carol Burnett's story makes you smile, cry, or just feel warm inside, Leave a like, comment, or share this video with someone you love. Because sometimes, in a noisy and turbulent world, the most precious thing is a genuine laugh from someone who has learned to turn their wounds into light. They were once an indispensable part of our childhood memories, present every day through the small screen, bringing laughter, familiar melodies, and stories that touched our hearts. We used to believe that they would always be there, shining and never fading. Then, over the years, they gradually disappeared, silently like a wisp of smoke without a word of farewell. Some people actively withdrew, seeking peace behind the spotlight. Some collapsed under the pressure of fame, and there were also those who left forever, leaving behind many regrets and unanswered questions. What really happened to the faces that were once loved by millions of hearts? Let's go back to the past. Not to judge, but to understand, to be grateful, and to preserve the beautiful memories they once brought to us. There was a time in the 1990s when Jonathan Taylor Thomas was more than just a child actor. He was an icon for a generation. His face was plastered across teen magazine covers, his smile was plastered on every bedroom wall, and his voice, as the cub Simba in The Lion King, touched the hearts of millions of young viewers. With his role in the hit sitcom Home Improvement, Jonathan was not only the lovable boy next door, but also the brightest star in the entertainment sky at that time. However, when the halo was still shining brightly, he suddenly disappeared. No scandals, no tears on TV, no goodbyes. Just a quiet retreat, so quiet that it startled people. When Jonathan left the entertainment industry in the early 2000s, rumors began to spread. Some said he was pursuing education, others said he hated fame. But the truth is surprisingly simple. He just wants a normal life. No flashbulbs, no red carpets, no showbiz noise, just philosophy, literature, and history lessons in silent lecture halls. The image of the boy who once made the world fall in love is no longer on the big screen, but only occasionally appears in a few guest roles or a few rare shared lines. Not enough to call it a comeback, but enough to remind that he was once a beautiful part of memories. Perhaps that is what makes Jonathan special, because not everyone can let go of the spotlight when it is at its brightest. Jonathan Taylor Thomas seems to have understood what not all stars realize, that there are people who shine the brightest not because they always stay on stage, but because they know when to step down, gently and at the right time. And perhaps that is why his image, with a warm smile in the middle of a family movie scene, is still forever preserved in the hearts of the audience, like a moment that will never fade. Mara Wilson wasn't just a little girl who played magical characters. She was the magic itself. For those who grew up in the 90s, Mara was the intelligent eyes, the soft voice, and the emotional heart, all of which combined to create roles that were both touching and deeply endearing. Whether she was confronting the fearsome headmistress in Matilda or touching on loss in Mrs. Doubtfire, Mara always captivated audiences. There was something about her, an unplayable sincerity, an odd sense of familiarity that made viewers feel as if they really knew her, understood her. Then one day she disappeared. No scandal, no loud goodbye, no missed comeback, just retreat. Not because of failure, but because of choice. And then we realized, Hollywood is not for everyone, especially sensitive souls like her. When she was a child, the spotlight was a dream. But when she grew up, it became a burden. Mara was not allowed to grow up like other children. She was trapped in an image that the world did not want to let go. And instead of continuing to play the role that people expected, she chose to rewrite her own story. Mara Wilson is no longer the little girl of family movies, but a powerful writer, a strong inspiration for those who have been lost in the dark. She writes about trauma, about mental health, about life after the spotlight, in a voice that is honest and brave. What she shares is not to attract attention, but to heal for herself and for those who have gone through the same thing. Perhaps we have lost a brilliant child actor, but in return, we get a much more honest and thoughtful storyteller. Mara left the stage not because she had nothing more to say, but because she found another way to be heard. And in her life-changing performance, without a script, without a camera, she demonstrated something incredibly powerful, that sometimes knowing when to leave is not the end, but the beginning of a new chapter, authentic, free, and meaningful. Jake Lloyd could have become an icon. After all, how many people have ever played Anakin Skywalker, a key character in one of the greatest cinematic universes in history? Star Wars Episode I, The Phantom Menace, should have been the launch pad for him to the pinnacle of fame. Instead, Jake became a sad testament to the harsh price of childhood fame. When the film was released, instead of being celebrated, Jake became the focus of criticism. Audiences, the press, even his peers, all seemed to forget that he was just a kid. The sarcastic comments aimed at his immature acting completely blurred the line between the character and his real self. For many, Jake was just disappointing Anakin. And for Jake, that name became a heavy shadow over his childhood. Instead of being protected, he was left in the middle of a public storm alone and completely unprepared. Not only did Jake leave the acting industry, he also refused to have any connection with his past. Mementos related to the film were destroyed. The rare times he shared about his experience were not with pride, but with deep hurt. The Phantom Menace should have been the start of a brilliant journey, but for Jake, it was the beginning of a series of days trying to escape a name he never really chose. Later, Jake faced many mental health issues. There were times when it seemed like everything was getting better. Then there were heartbreaking news reports. Even though the world may forget his role, the consequences it left behind still smoldered. Because the most heartbreaking thing was, Jake never craved fame. He was just a chosen boy. But when the spotlight shines, what he loses is innocence, peace, his childhood. Now, all that remains is silence. Not the silence of a fading star, but the void that could have held something more beautiful. Jake Lloyd's story ends not with a flash of light, but with a quiet dot, a reminder that not all children who are put on stage have the chance to walk off peacefully. Lisa Jakob is the kind of person you can trust at first sight. In Mrs. Doubtfire, she is the rebellious yet empathetic daughter. In Independence Day, she is the panic-stricken teenager in the midst of disaster but still maintains emotional depth. There is an unvarnished authenticity to Lisa. No need for loud scenes or dramatic dialogue. She is still able to touch the hearts of viewers with her simplicity and sincerity that is so quiet. She is not the most impressive person in a room, but she is always the most real. And sometimes it is those who are the most real who are the first to realize when things are no longer right. Lisa's exit from Hollywood was not shocking, not controversial, but quiet, gentle but decisive. A gentle retreat but with many layers of meaning, because there are truths that cannot continue to be covered up by the spotlight. At the age of 14, Lisa was forced to leave her school because of her demanding filming schedule. Robin Williams, her co-star, mentor, and sympathetic companion, even wrote to her to be allowed to stay. But the industry made it clear, to be an actress, you have to sacrifice your real life. Gradually, Lisa felt the gap between who she was and the role she was being assigned to play widen. She no longer saw herself in those scripts, and instead of trying to fit into a mold, Lisa walked away. Not because she was a failure, but because she longed for a life more genuine and profound than any role could ever provide. Away from the set, Lisa turned to words. She wrote, she shared, she healed. Like Mara Wilson, Lisa gave voice to those who had been the kids in the spotlight but had never been truly heard. In her memoir, You Look Like That Girl, she neither embellishes the past nor feels sorry for herself. She simply and honestly tells the story of her journey to find herself after the spotlight. And from there, Lisa turns fading memories into a small, gentle, but resilient flame that still burns in the hearts of those who remember her. We may still remember Lisa Jakob through her past roles, but what makes her live forever in the hearts of her fans is not a face on the screen, but a true voice from a soul that refuses to be forgotten. Because sometimes disappearing is not an ending. It is a return with a real name, a real life, and the real person you have always been. Michael Oliver is the kind of kid who can turn chaos into a charming comedy. As Junior in Problem Child, he not only brings laughter but also breathes new life into the child star image. Not the stereotypically docile, cute kid, but a mischievous, troublemaking kid who is impossible to hate. Junior is a lovable disaster, and Michael lives up to that role with explosive, instinctive energy. But then, like an unexpected twist, Michael disappears. No grand farewell, no announcement of withdrawal, just one day, he is no longer present. And when we look back, we realize the signs of his departure have always been smoldering behind the camera. Problem Child was a huge commercial success, but behind the scenes there was a series of troubles, lawsuits, contract disputes, and financial management scandals. In the spotlight, Michael was still just a child, and the fires of the entertainment industry burned that childhood away faster than anyone could have imagined. When the pressures became too great, Michael didn't just withdraw from acting, he withdrew from the entire Hollywood cycle. And since then, he has rarely looked back. Today, Michael Oliver lives a simple life, completely separate from the spotlight. No memoirs, no talk shows, no attempts to come back. He doesn't need the stage to be heard because his silence speaks for itself. In a world where everyone is competing to maintain fame, choosing privacy is a courageous statement. Perhaps the best ending for a child star is not to continue to be famous, but to be allowed to live as himself, not to be framed in the memories of others. It's easy to think that stars like Michael have been forgotten. But the truth may be much simpler. They didn't disappear. They just found a more peaceful place to continue growing up. And for Michael Oliver, it was perhaps that retreat that was the most courageous and honest role of his life. Mike Vitar was the kind of kid who made summer seem like it would never end. As Benny the Jet Rodriguez on The Sandlot, he was not only the fastest kid on the court, he was also the symbol of a glorious childhood, unconditional friendship, and a sense of freedom that everyone longed for at some point. Then, the fire continued to burn brightly on the ice in The Mighty Ducks, where Mike once again made his mark with his dynamism, his fearlessness, and his natural charisma. He didn't just act, he became part of the childhood memories of an entire generation. Then one day, Mike left. There was no fuss, no televised goodbye, no trace of scandal. He just disappeared. Gently, like the way a summer ends, leaving a sweet aftertaste but no sound. While fans still remember the boy running around the bases in sneakers, Mike donned a new uniform, not of a movie, but of real courage. He became a firefighter, not a role, not a script, just a real job, saving lives, facing danger, and keeping a steely spirit every day. That decision needs no explanation, because it speaks volumes about Mike Vitar. A man not fascinated by the spotlight, but driven by meaning. When Hollywood continued to call, he listened to another call, quieter but more humane and noble. There was something beautiful in that choice. Mike didn't disappear because he stumbled, nor did he leave because he ran out of opportunities. He simply chose a life that didn't need the spotlight to shine. A life where he wasn't just remembered, but truly made an impact. And perhaps that's what's special about his passing. It doesn't feel like a loss. It feels like a privilege to have seen him in a brief moment on screen before he stepped into his true role. Because not all heroes stand in front of the camera. Some quietly put on their hard hats, carry fire hoses, and quietly become real-life heroes. Eric Per Sullivan is the kind of strange person you admire and secretly wish you could be like. As Dewey in Malcolm in the Middle, he didn't have to try to shine, he just showed up. In a world full of chaos, Dewey was chaos, gentle, unexpected, and profound. No one could predict what he would say next, and it was that unpredictability that made audiences so enthralled. Distinctive, witty, sometimes even emotionally beyond his years, Eric created an irreplaceable character. But then, as if it were part of a strange story, Eric disappeared. When Malcolm in the Middle ended, so did his acting career, without a goodbye, without a party, without an official explanation. It was just a gap that gradually appeared, where the audience had expected to see him grow up on screen. He appeared a few times in the early 2000s, but there was nothing enough to call it a comeback. Then, at some point, people stopped asking. Perhaps because, to some extent, everyone knew that Eric had chosen a different path. Rumors spread, hypotheses followed one another, but Eric never spoke up. And perhaps he didn't need to, because silence is sometimes not an avoidance, but a deeper answer than any public statement. Perhaps that silence is his way of saying that not every life needs a comeback, and not every story needs a new chapter. Sometimes the curtain closes, and the artist just quietly walks away, without regret, without looking back. And while there is something unsettling about it, a sense of unfinished business, as if something has yet to be said, there is no denying that Dewey is more than just a character. He is a reflection of the strange, sensitive, extraordinary part of every child. And Eric, the boy who once provided that unique insight, chose for himself what many other child stars never had the chance to do: an escape, a real life, an anonymity that requires no permission. Sometimes choosing to disappear and to remain silent is the bravest thing a person can do. And perhaps that was Eric Sullivan's final and most honest role. Jeff Cohen gave audiences one of the most memorable performances of the 80s, complete with a round belly, a silly dance move, and an unmistakable scream. As Chunk in The Goonies, Jeff was not your typical hero, but his down-to-earth, likable, and genuine personality made millions laugh and then fall in love. The Truffle Shuffle scene became a pop culture icon, and Jeff Cohen, in his own way, became an integral part of a generation's childhood memories. But instead of continuing to pursue the spotlight, Jeff took a surprising path. He quietly left acting and entered a completely different world, the world of law. No longer the funny kid on screen, Jeff became a respected entertainment lawyer, working behind the scenes to protect the rights of other artists. He didn't try to cling to his old glory, nor did he let Hollywood confine him to an image of the past. Instead, he took the initiative to rewrite his life story, with knowledge, with integrity, and with a completely new direction. What's admirable is that Jeff's journey to adulthood is not just a change of direction, but an act of self-definition with courage. The boy who once had to scream to be heard is now the one helping other artists find their own voice, in an industry that is inherently difficult to understand or protect insiders. Jeff Cohen is not only a good lawyer, but also a living proof that child actors can grow up and shine in a completely different way, quietly but sustainably, quietly but deeply. Because sometimes the most heroic actions don't come from the spotlight, but from brave decisions behind the scenes. Jeff Cohen hasn't disappeared from the entertainment world. He's just moved from the center of the camera to a role where he continues to write beautiful things. And perhaps it's the strongest and most mature version of the boy who once made the world laugh with a silly dance. Taron Noah Smith is the awkward, quiet, but indispensable youngest son of the Taylor family on Home Improvement. He grew up on television every day, from a child with a high-pitched voice to a boy with a deep voice, from bewildered expressions to mature eyes. Throughout the journey of the hit series, when America turned on the TV every night, Taron was present, not loud, not ostentatious, but always enough to create a soul for the whole family on screen. What's special about Taron is, he never actively sought the limelight. Fame came to him as a natural part of the job, but it was never something he pursued. And when Home Improvement ended, when many other co-stars were looking for their next steps in Hollywood, Taron, then 17 years old, chose to quietly leave. There were no flashy farewells, no noisy comebacks. He disappeared just as he had always appeared. Quietly, quietly. But his disappearance was not an escape. It was a journey to find himself. Taron left the stage not just to avoid the spotlight, but to live a truly meaningful life. He became a vegan, living sustainably and in tune with nature. No longer a child star in front of the camera, he built his own houses from recycled materials and ran an organic food company that served schools. While many former stars sought to return to their former glory, Taron chose to keep his feet on the ground, both literally and figuratively. He has spoken about the difficulty of growing up in the shadow of fame, about how fame can make a child lose his way between his own ego and outside expectations. But instead of letting those pressures define him, Taron chose a different path, one that was quiet, persistent, and profound. He didn't want to be remembered for his old lines or his TV reruns. He wanted to leave something real, something lasting, not in memory but in real life. The world may have forgotten his name, but Taron never forgot who he was. And there's a beauty in a child star growing up, not to live in the same light, but to become the person that boy really needed. Taron Noah Smith has stepped off the screen, but he hasn't disappeared. He's just chosen a different way, a more appropriate way to be present, to make an impact, to leave his mark. Danny Lloyd gave one of the most haunting performances in horror cinema history, and it's strange to think that, at the time, he didn't really understand what genre he was playing. As Danny Torrance in The Shining, the boy with the unseen gaze and the ability to see what no one wants to see, Danny instilled unforgettable images in the viewer's mind, not with screams or panic, but with a chilling stillness. But what's more remarkable is that when the camera stopped rolling, Danny Lloyd didn't bring that darkness into the real world. He was just a simple, curious kid and wanted to get back to the real world. At just 6 years old, Danny caught the eye of Stanley Kubrick, one of the most demanding directors of all time. But Kubrick also did something rare. He shielded Danny from the real content of the film. Lloyd didn't know he was in a horror film. He was just playing a boy living in a big hotel with his parents. And like his character, Lloyd carried a certain awareness, a certain detachment, not from the supernatural world, but from the spotlight that Hollywood often showered on kids like him. After The Shining, Danny Lloyd almost completely withdrew from the entertainment industry. No interviews, no comebacks, no scripts waiting. He disappeared in a way that only those who truly knew him could. While other children struggled to survive in the early spotlight, Lloyd quietly transformed himself away from the spotlight to find a more real path. He became a biology professor, a devoted father, a calm husband. No longer the boy who rode a tricycle through creepy hallways, Danny now lived the life he always wanted. No applause, just peace and simplicity. When he reappeared in a rare interview after a decade-long absence, Lloyd didn't talk about regret or comebacks. He simply expressed gratitude for being himself, for growing up without being consumed by the role of his childhood. And it's easy to forget that behind every iconic child role is a real person, with his own dreams, his own desires, and sometimes a simple wish: to live a life away from the spotlight. Danny Lloyd is not a faded star. He is a man who once walked out of a horror movie, not haunted, but grateful. And sometimes the best endings don't come from the screen, but from everyday life, where the protagonist gets to write his own ending. Charles Herbert was more than just a child actor. He was a living icon of 1950s Hollywood. Before he turned 16, he had appeared in more than 40 films and dozens of television appearances, becoming a familiar face in living rooms across America. As television began to dominate popular culture, Charles was an indispensable part of it, a sought-after talent, a name that studios fought over, and a man who brought laughter and tears to millions, even though he was still too young to understand the price of the spotlight. But then, as is the cruel rule of the entertainment industry, as Charles grew older, things began to change. His voice was no longer clear, his face no longer innocent, and the roles gradually closed in on him. The boy who had been pure gold on screen became an unwelcome teenager, swallowed up by the very machine that had once raised him. It was a lonely journey. As the phones stopped ringing, the fan letters stopped, and the fame faded faster than anyone could have imagined. The transition from the spotlight of child stardom to ordinary life is never easy, and for Charles, it was a fall from grace. He has spoken of a controlled childhood, when every decision was in the hands of adults, when work overshadowed his school dreams. Behind the bright lights were years of struggling with addiction, poverty, and neglect. But Charles refused to let himself disappear into the darkness. He returned not to play a role, but to tell his story, honest, candid, and sober. What sets Charles Herbert apart is his compassion and composure. He does not hold grudges, does not blame the audience or the industry that once lifted him to the top and then abandoned him without mercy. Instead, he chose to tell the truth, that childhood should not be a commodity to be traded for money or fame, that when fame comes too early, the price to be paid can last a lifetime. Charles Herbert may have faded from public consciousness, but his lesson remains. Not every famous story has a happy ending, but those who dare to stand up, dare to speak out, dare to turn the past into a reminder for the future. They never really go away. They become a lasting voice in a world that is constantly wavering between glory and oblivion. Dana Plato was the epitome of innocence, loveliness, and approachability, and America's big sister in the hearts of 80s audiences. As Kimberly Drummond in the hit series Different Strokes, Dana brought gentleness, sophistication, and a warm heart to a comedy that dared to touch on thorny social issues. Her smile once made millions feel safe, but behind the camera, her eyes contained many things that had never been said. Fame came to her so quickly that no one, including herself, was prepared for the journey of holding herself in the whirlwind of fame. As the laughter gradually died down and the roles became increasingly rare, Dana became lost in a world that once welcomed her with applause. No longer a shining star, she struggled to survive, to keep a bit of her old light. Her hasty and desperate choices gradually took her away from her true self, from shoddy acting roles to tabloid appearances she didn't even want to look back on. Dana's deep sadness was no longer something she could hide. It invaded her entire life, dragging her into a spiral of addiction, a growing shadow that no one could help her dispel. Dana tried, many times, to start over, to regain her former light. But the price of early fame was the feeling of being forgotten before she had time to grow up. Every time she tried to stand up, the world seemed to remind her of who she used to be, but no longer. And then, at the age of 34, Dana died of a drug overdose, a tragic end to a journey that many had hoped would have a chance to turn around. What was even more heartbreaking was that just a day before, she had gone on the radio, sharing the new hope and positive future she had found. Dana Plato's story is not a simple fall. It is a poignant reminder that the spotlight can be dazzling, but also cruel if you step into it too early and without protection. It is proof that behind every child star's smile, there is sometimes an unheard cry for help. Dana is not just a forgotten icon. She is a wake-up call for an industry that has too easily lifted children up and then pulled them back when they needed it most. And in the hearts of those who loved her, Dana Plato's voice has never stopped ringing. Jimmy McNichol wasn't just a teen idol. He was a living icon of the late 70s with his signature tousled hair, his heart-melting smile, and his natural presence that made it hard for movie producers to ignore him. He was a regular on the small screen, on the music scene with his sister Christy McNichol, and gracing the covers of popular teen magazines. With his versatile talent and devoted fan base, Jimmy seemed on track to become a major Hollywood star, But then, just as the spotlight was on him, Jimmy abruptly stepped back from the spotlight. There was no scandal, no fall, just a quiet but determined decision. He chose to step away from the spotlight. In the early 1990s, when many of his contemporaries were still clinging to fame, Jimmy decided to take a completely different path, one that led to nature, tranquility, and sustainable values. He pursued a career in real estate while devoting his time and energy to environmental protection activities. For Jimmy, leaving Hollywood was not a loss, but a journey of self-definition. He chose to become a person who lived for the community, close to the land, the trees, and everyday life, a simple choice that required extraordinary courage. Today, Jimmy McNichol lives a peaceful life, separate from the noise of the entertainment industry that once celebrated him. Occasionally, he still shares about the old days, but not to evoke the glory of the past, but to express gratitude for the path that led him to the present. He has no regrets, no resentment. Instead, it is the serenity of someone who once stood at the top, but was sober enough to leave at the right time and find himself again in the simplest way. Perhaps that is the deepest message from his journey, that sometimes disappearing is not the end, but the most powerful way to start over in the most authentic way. Quinn Cummings has never been the type of child star to be packaged as a product. She is smart, sharp, and deeply self-aware in a way that her Oscar-nominated performance in The Goodbye Girl is not just acting, but a lived truth. She is a child who dares to say things that adults are often shy or afraid to say. But even in her prime, Quinn saw through the veneer and knew its price. Before the entertainment industry could burn her out, before roles dried up and she could lose herself, Quinn decided to strike out on her own. She did not disappear into obscurity or silence, but was reborn as a writer, entrepreneur, and sharp commentator. Her essays are both funny and honest, unflinchingly exposing the absurdities of fame, the complexities of parenting, and the pressures of an image-obsessed society. Her exit was not a mystery or a disappearance, but a powerful statement about her identity not being held captive by box office numbers or red carpet glamour. Quinn has built a new career based on intelligence, integrity, and inner freedom, not on the past or nostalgia. In a culture that often swallows up young people and turns them into fleeting icons, Quinn Cummings has disappeared on her own terms, not as an end, but as a powerful and meaningful transition. She is not gone. She is simply in a better place, a more honest and authentic place. Jane Withers was the kind of child star who made a generation stop and take notice, not just because of her talent, but because of the energy that radiated from her radiant smile and unmistakable personality. In the 1930s, she was a phenomenon, standing alongside the big names, topping the box office, and becoming a symbol of fun, intelligence, and charm. Jane didn't just act, she lived each character, making every appearance on screen an emotional feast. And then, at her peak, she decided to retire. No scandal, no failure, just a brave decision, to stop while the spotlight was still on her. But Jane Withers didn't disappear. She just transformed. In the decades that followed, she continued to work tirelessly behind the scenes, from supporting actress to voice actor to TV commercial icon. The older generation remembers her as a bubbly child star. The newer generation knows her as Josephine, the famous plumber in a series of hit commercials. Regardless of who is watching, Jane remains the same, funny, charming, and always in control of her own story. What is admirable about Jane is not her early fame, but the way she matures through each stage, not being imprisoned in the glorious past. She does not cling to the halo of her childhood, but steadfastly moves forward, leaving a lasting mark with a rich and complete life. Her journey is proof that disappearing is sometimes not a step back, but a wise life strategy. When you know how to quietly retreat to recover and then come back with a better, stronger, and more authentic version. Carrie Henn is not a child star in the Hollywood mold. She is a cinematic moment that cannot be repeated. At just 10 years old, the non-professional girl transformed into Newt in Aliens, giving a performance that was both genuine and haunting. The wide eyes in the darkness, the soft voice in the moments of life and death, and the hidden strength of a child trapped in an alien hell. All of it made for a small character with extraordinary weight. Carrie did not need training in school, did not need the spotlight. It was her simplicity and instinct that made her leave an indelible mark on cinema history. But what is more special than the role is the way Carrie chose her life behind the camera lights. Not chasing fame, not participating in teen showbiz, not trying to hold on to the image of a child star. Carrie quietly went her own way. She returned to her normal life, went to school, got a teaching degree, and became a teacher. A peaceful but valuable profession. While fans still appreciate her through tribute events, Carrie still lives simply, not chasing the fame she once reached. It is not a giving up, but a conscious choice, knowing which light she truly wants to follow. Carrie once warmly recounted her time making films, her kinship with Sigourney Weaver, and the honor of being in an iconic film. But most importantly, she always knew where she belonged. She entered Hollywood like a miracle, and also left like a beautiful silence, without regret, without noise. Carrie Henn shows us something simple but profound. Sometimes, retreating is not a failure, but an active and courageous action. Disappearing from the spotlight does not mean being forgotten, but it is a way for a person to preserve himself, to move on with a life that does not need to act, just needs to be real. Amanda Bynes was once the epitome of childhood, a face that brought genuine laughter, pure energy, and a natural charm that few others had. From all that to The Amanda Show, she was more than just a child comedian. Amanda was the soul of a generation of young audiences who grew up on the small screen. With her extraordinary expressive ability and sharp intelligence that was rare for her age, she became a phenomenon. No tricks, no noise, just being herself was enough to make viewers laugh and love her. However, as the spotlight gradually became brighter, Amanda's life also became more fragile. The girl who once captivated millions of viewers faced unexpected storms, ruthless media scrutiny, vicious rumors, and silent wounds from a system that was inherently unforgiving of weakness. Her mental health issues began to surface, and Amanda, with millions of eyes on her, was forced to save herself. But she did not succumb. Amanda withdrew from the industry that had once celebrated her to begin her journey of healing. She pursued her studies, found a new passion in fashion design, and slowly rebuilt herself step by step in silence. Her rare appearances after that were not meant to attract attention, but simply a whisper that she was still here, still trying, still recovering. Today, Amanda is no longer the innocent girl who once made the world laugh, but she has not lost that. She is a testament to the power of resilience, that sometimes courage is not about facing the big stage, but about daring to face yourself when no one is clapping. Amanda Bynes does not need a big comeback to be remembered. She has left a mark in the hearts of the audience, not only because of her former fame, but also because of her journey through the darkness to find herself again, more peaceful and real than ever. Corey Haim was more than just a teen idol. He was a living symbol of the 80s, the soul of an era where youthful fragility and rebellion flourished on screen. With his innocent smile and soulful eyes, Corey was a strangely relatable presence. Whether he was the wounded boy in Lucas, the rebellious playboy in The Lost Boys, or the eager young man trying to get his driver's license in License to Drive, Corey always made viewers see themselves, imperfect but real and lovable. But behind the bright lights was a dark story that he had to live through. When fame comes too early, it not only brings with it a halo, but also a burden. A burden that swept away Corey's childhood, leaving a void that nothing could fill. He began struggling with addiction at a young age, and fame only made it easier to hide his wounds. On the outside, he was still a shining star. On the inside, he was a boy trying to hold on to a piece of himself amidst silent loss. The friendship between Corey Haim and Corey Feldman was one of the rare bright spots in that tumultuous journey. Two children grew up in a world full of temptation, found shelter in friendship, and fought together to keep themselves. But even so, the mental wounds from an irresponsible entertainment system still smoldered. Corey once shared a simple dream: to live a normal life, to be himself, not an image molded to please the public. In 2010, Corey Haim breathed his last at the age of 38 due to complications from pneumonia. But the truth is, a part of Corey was gone long before that, when the spotlight dimmed and no one really saw him as a person. He died as if he were still a boy, forever trapped in the golden hour of his lonely, famous years. And perhaps the saddest part of his story is not his passing, but the fact that the world failed to protect a soul so sensitive in a cycle so harsh. Corey Haim will always be remembered not only for his classic roles, but also for the vulnerability, honesty, and beautiful sadness that touched the hearts of many generations. Haley Joel Osment was once the boy who silenced the world with one line: "I see dead people." But behind those haunting, wide-eyed eyes was a child actor with extraordinary abilities, not just because of his iconic role in The Sixth Sense, but because of his ability to convey emotions so profound that they were beyond his years. Haley didn't just stand out. He was a phenomenon, a sought-after, praised talent, considered a rare gem of late 1990s cinema. But when many thought he would continue to climb the ladder of Hollywood, Haley did the opposite. He didn't fade away because of scandal, didn't disappear because of notoriety. He actively withdrew, away from the camera and the hustle and bustle, to begin a different journey, studying, calming down, and redefining himself. While many child stars struggled to maintain their old glory, Haley chose to step away from the game for a while to discover who he truly was beyond his role. He went to college like any other normal student, without needing recognition, without needing the spotlight to affirm his own worth. And when he returned, he did not try to recreate the image of the boy from back then. Haley returned as an adult, choosing strange, sharp, and profound roles that people did not expect from a former child star, but completely suitable for the person he is now. He did not try to please the audience's memories, but built a new path, a new identity, solid, separate, and true. Haley Joel Osment is a rare testament to one thing. It is possible to leave the spotlight without losing one's way, to be famous from a young age without losing oneself. His disappearance was not a sign of failure, but a courageous choice to grow up quietly, then return with a new vision and an intact heart. In the seductive entertainment world, that journey is nothing short of a miracle. Anissa Jones was once like a gentle ray of sunshine that penetrated the hearts of audiences across America. As Buffy in Family Affair, the petite girl with an innocent smile and expressive eyes brought something very special, an unadorned sincerity, a pure beauty that the audience could not take their eyes off. Anissa did not just act, she lived in every scene, making the character the soul of the entire series and leaving an impression far beyond the framework of television. However, when the camera lights turned off, her world gradually sank into silence. Fame came to Anissa too early, too overwhelming, but did not come with the necessary guidance or protection. When Family Affair ended, Anissa was only 13 years old, an age when she should have been free to grow up. But all the doors to normal life seemed to have closed. She was no longer an unknown child among her peers, but Buffy, a character that society expected her to continue playing forever. She tried to step away from the spotlight, living as a normal young woman, but the shadow of the past quietly weighed down on her. The pressure, expectations, feelings of being forgotten, and the lack of a support system gradually dragged Anissa down. In 1976, she died of a drug overdose at the age of 18, a heartbreaking end to a youth that had not yet blossomed. Anissa Jones's story is not only a wake-up call about the fragility of childhood when caught up in the entertainment industry, but also a stern reminder. Not all child stars have a fairy tale ending. Anissa deserves to be remembered not for the way she died, but for the pure light she once brought, a light that has never truly faded in the memories of those who loved her. She is not only the Buffy of her time, but also represents many children who are swept up into the adult world too soon, children who need to be loved and protected more when the stage closes and real life begins. One would think that when a hit comedy like Animal House is adapted into a TV series, success is inevitable. But Delta House is a testament to the fact that the magic of the big screen cannot be easily replicated on the small screen. Based on the original's chaotic, humorous, and rebellious spirit, the series tried to translate that charm into a weekly sitcom, where everything had to go through the strict censorship filter of network television. And that is what caused Animal House to lose its original vitality. The crazy parties, wild free spirit, and unbridled comedy that made the original famous have become timid and bland. Although John Vernon returns as the stern Principal Wormer, the absence of John Belushi, the soul of the whole show, has left the TV version without its true heart. The comedy became forced, the characters were tamed down to fit the time and broadcast standards, and the once trademark flamboyance was now a faint echo of the past. ABC initially believed that simply attaching the name Animal House would be enough to attract viewers, but viewers were not so easily captivated. They did not find the rebellious spirit that had made them so fond of it. Despite opening to strong ratings, the show quickly lost its appeal, and after just 13 episodes, Delta House was canceled amid indifference from both viewers and the network. Instead of becoming a worthy successor, Delta House became a prime example of how television, with all its limitations and standards, can dilute the very thing it was trying to replicate. The rebellious spirit cannot be forced into a box, and the wildness, if toned down, is no longer the show. Today, Delta House is remembered only by nostalgics or those curious about television's historical missteps. An attempt at cinematic chaos that ended in a sad silence. In a sea of teen TV shows filled with predictable humor and unrealistic characters, The Mystery Files of Shelby Woo stands out as a breath of fresh air, honest, sophisticated, and inspiring. Shelby Woo is not a pop star or a magical princess. She is just a smart, curious teenager with a desire to be heard, to contribute, and to prove herself in a world that is too prejudiced. Set in a sleepy small town in Florida, the series follows Shelby as she goes through high school and interns with the local police department. Each episode is a new mystery, and each case is an opportunity for Shelby to prove her intelligence, patience, and keen observation. But The Mystery Files of Shelby Woo is about more than clues, crime scenes, and conclusions. It is also a coming-of-age story, a journey of self-affirmation in a world that often underestimates youth. Unlike many teen series that often distort reality with exaggerated humor or dramatic scripts, Shelby Woo chooses a gentle, intimate, but no less profound storytelling style. Shelby has no magic or supernatural abilities. Her strength comes from her intelligence, empathy, and will to never give up. That is what makes her a special figure. Not loud, not flashy, but full of influence. The show empowers the younger generation by believing that they can understand complex issues, think independently, and make the right decisions. Shelby Woo is not unconventional in a rebellious way, but in a persistent and kind way. While later shows gradually shifted to more flashy and eye-catching content, the image of a girl who quietly solves cases, lives up to her ideals, and does not need anyone's recognition has always remained in the hearts of the audience. Shelby does not need the spotlight to shine. All she needed was a puzzle, a goal, and the belief that wisdom and kindness were always worth pursuing. And that's what made The Mystery Files of Shelby Woo such a memorable, irreplaceable part of the memories of so many viewers who grew up with her. Prophet wasn't just ahead of its time. It seemed to come from a different television universe, one devoid of comfort or familiar stereotypes. Running briefly in 1996, the series centered on Jim Prophet, a CEO with a sharp mind, a cold heart, and a masterful ability to manipulate. He lived in a cardboard box, stared at the audience through the fourth wall, and turned the workplace into a chessboard where morality was tested and greed reigned. In an era when American television was immersed in the warmth and fun of Friends, Frasier, and other endearing family series, Prophet felt like a cold slap in the face. It was so raw, cold, and dangerous that it made people shudder. After only a few episodes, Prophet was canceled, not because it was bad, but because it was too bold, too real. It forced viewers to confront their own dark sides. Jim Prophet was neither a villain nor a hero. He was a mirror of a society dominated by power, ambition, and indifference. And it was that stark truth that the audience at the time was not ready to accept. The series did not offer a moral lesson, but invited viewers to enter a world where manipulation was an art and trust was just a tool. But over time, Prophet did not fade away. It became a legacy. Loyal viewers cherished every detail, every line of dialogue, and considered it a precursor to an era of complex anti-heroes, from Tony Soprano to Don Draper to Walter White. Looking back now, one can see the extraordinary vision of the show, from themes such as corruption in the workplace, childhood trauma, to the question of what the individual self is in a society with no moral boundaries. Adrian Pasdar as Jim Prophet is both dangerous and charismatic, a talking snake, both hypnotic and menacing. And his presence alone confirms that Prophet is not just a forgotten series, but a forgotten prophecy. In 1996, America looked away not because Prophet was ill-timed, but because it was so right that it was too good to face. And in that silence, a groundbreaking work retreated to become a legend. A television show that seemed to fall apart before the eyes of its viewers, unscripted, undirected, unstaged. An American Family pioneered a whole new genre, the raw, unedited portrayal of an American family, the Loud Family. When it aired in 1973, it shattered every stereotype of family television. There were no forced smiles, safe morals, or happy endings. This was real life, and America was not ready to deal with it. On the small screen, the Louds were as they were. Undisguised conflicts, vulnerable moments, unshed tears. Viewers witnessed the breakdown of a marriage in real time, and one of the children, Lance Loud, came out publicly on television at a time when such things were still considered taboo. This wasn't just television. It was a social conversation that no one expected. The public response was both powerful and contradictory. Some were angry, some were confused, but some felt seen, represented for the first time. The Loud Family weren't perfect, and that was part of the power of the show. They were a mirror of a changing America, with all the ambiguity, anxiety, and courage that came with it. An American Family only aired once, for 13 documentary episodes, but its legacy lives on. It paved the way for a new genre reality television, but no show since has been able to reach its raw, audacious authenticity. The Loud Family didn't disappear because they were wrong. They disappeared because they dared to speak the truth at a time when the rest of society was trying to avoid it. Today, when we re-watch An American Family, we are like opening a diary full of unfinished emotions, where we realize how much we have changed and how much remains unchanged. The Loud Family are not heroes, nor are they created icons. They are ordinary people who created a television revolution with their unvarnished honesty. Dana Plato was America's gentle big sister. As Kimberly Drummond on Different Strokes, She not only brought charm and warmth to the small screen, but also provided an emotional anchor that balanced the bold themes it explored. With her gentle smile and clear eyes, Dana seemed to embody the ideal life that audiences always yearned for. However, behind those eyes was a silent and deep story that had never been spoken. Fame came to her too early, too young to understand that the spotlight not only shines but also burns. When the roles ended and opportunities gradually became scarce, the industry continued to move on, leaving Dana lost in a reality that no longer had a place for her. She struggled to hold on to her fame, but each subsequent choice seemed to reflect more of an effort to survive than a purposeful direction. From disappointing small roles to appearances in the press for non-artistic reasons, Dana's public image gradually faded. Despite many attempts to get back on her feet, to quit drugs, find a way back, rebuild her life, the shadow of a famous childhood and the feeling of being forgotten too quickly was not easy to overcome. In 1999, at the age of 34, Dana died of a drug overdose, a day after she appeared on the radio sharing her hope to revive her life. Her death was a heartbreaking end to an unfinished story and a sad note in the history of American television. Dana Plato's story is not only a personal tragedy, but also a profound warning about the price of early fame and quick oblivion. It reminds us that behind every laugh is a person with unhealed wounds, that not everyone who steps into the spotlight will find a way out, and that sometimes what they need is not admiration but understanding and protection before it's too late. Bigelow Theater was one of those short-lived lights in the television sky. Brilliant, full of potential, then quietly fading away before it could leave a lasting legacy. Airing from 1950 to 1951, the show existed in many forms, first as an anthology series on CBS, then resurrected under different names on the Dumont network. But the spirit that ran through all of these formats was the same. A celebration of theater, bringing real life to the small screen in a concise, dramatic form that felt like a live performance. No glitz, no formula. What made Bigelow Theater memorable wasn't just the structure of the show, but the people who took to its stage. A young James Dean appeared, before he was even a cultural icon. George C. Scott appeared too when he was still a relative unknown. In that brief moment, the show became the birthplace of legends. There was something raw, genuine, almost innocent about the way the actors of that time performed, not to become famous, but simply because they loved the art and wanted to tell a story. Bigelow Theater, in a way, is like an old photo album. Not everyone remembers it, not everyone has seen it, but for those who have, it leaves a vague but profound mark. It does not follow trends, does not try to please everyone. And perhaps that is why it was not appealing enough in the post-war period when the public was looking for easy entertainment, light laughter, or soft love songs. Bigelow Theater asked the audience to listen, to think, to feel something alien in the optimistic and hurried atmosphere of that time. Though forgotten in the mainstream, the Bigelow Theater quietly holds an important place in television history, a living museum of the earliest moments when American acting was still finding its form. Those old films, which may be covered in dust over the years, are opened up as time slowly moves back, reminding us that even the smallest things can hold the light of a future yet to be formed. "You're under arrest, sweetie." Just one line was enough to make the whole of America turn its head. Get Christie Love was more than just a crime series, it was a statement. When it aired in the mid-1970s, the show made history for American television by putting a black female detective, played by Teresa Graves, front and center. Christie Love was smart, sharp, charismatic, and irresistibly charismatic. In a television world still struggling with gender and racial stereotypes, her appearance was a breath of fresh air, bold and necessary. Based on the success of a single TV series, ABC believed they had found a gem for prime time, and indeed, for a moment, get Christy love and became a phenomenon. But then, the initial brilliance quickly gave way to inherent problems. The plots became increasingly repetitive, the action sequences lacked originality, and the production budget was insufficient to sustain the original ambition. Although Christy Love was established as a pioneering figure, the episodes rarely gave her the opportunity to break out of the stereotypes imposed by the system. Behind the camera, things were more complicated. After converting to a strict religious faith, Teresa Graves began refusing to film scenes that she deemed violent or inconsistent with her beliefs. This led to creative conflicts and made it difficult for the production team to shape the tone of the show. As a result, viewership plummeted, and after just one season, the show was canceled. Christy Love could have become a pioneering icon, but instead she was consigned to a shadowy footprint in television history. Her value, however, lies not in the number of episodes aired, but in what she represented. She was the first door opened, though she never quite made it all the way. Her legacy is a quiet but enduring inspiration for generations of strong black women to come. A courageous role model born from a series that never had the chance to truly shine, but still managed to shine a light for others to follow. The Beverly Hillbillies was supposed to be a one-off joke, a comedy idea overblown, an over-the-top contrast between country and city. But somehow the show didn't just survive, it became embedded in American culture, a part of the collective memory that hasn't completely faded to this day. The story of the Clampett family, simple country folk who make a fortune from an oil discovery and move to the heart of lavish Beverly Hills, is both funny and a little poignant. They enter a world they don't understand and don't want and find themselves outsiders in their own home. The laughter comes from the stark differences. Granny mixing potions in the mansion kitchen, Ellie Mae cuddling wild animals like her best friend, and Jed with his faraway gaze, always maintaining a stoic expression, as if he never really believed he belonged. Beneath the comedy, the show contained a gentle sadness, about not fitting in, about not feeling accepted despite having everything. The Clampetts didn't want to change, nor did they try to. They just stayed true to themselves, even when everyone around them made fun of them. Then one day it all ended. No drumbeat, no goodbye. The show that once dominated prime time quietly left the airwaves, making way for more edgy, modern, and eye-catching series. The simplicity, the slowness, the rusticity suddenly became outdated. But looking back, the Beverly Hillbillies was still a true slice of America, a place where differences weren't always welcomed. But that's what made the story memorable. Now, whenever we happen to see our great-grandmother in the kitchen or the familiar opening music, we don't just laugh, we feel nostalgic. Because the Beverly Hillbillies isn't just a sitcom, it's proof that sometimes the simplest things have the most lasting resonance. Amanda Bynes was once the epitome of childhood laughter, not because of her ridiculous antics, but because of her charm, innocence, and natural intelligence. On The Amanda Show, she was more than just a centerpiece. She was the soul of a generation, a familiar face that millions of kids eagerly sat in front of the screen every weekend. Amanda's talent was undeniable. She turned ordinary situations into memorable moments, and in every smile of the audience, there was a part of the memory of the little girl with her delicate acting. But then, everything changed. The innocent laughter was gone, replaced by a series of haunting headlines. Amanda entered a difficult period, no longer a shining star but the focus of scrutiny. She not only had to deal with mental health issues, she had to do it under the spotlight of the media, where every mistake was exaggerated, every stumble became a pastime. While the industry that once celebrated her now indifferently turned away, Amanda chose what few people dare to do, step away from the spotlight to save herself. She chose to study, to devote herself to fashion design, not to attract attention, but to rebuild her life in her own way. Amanda did not sugarcoat or hide her pain. She shared it with a rare candor that earned people not pity, but respect. Now she is no longer present on television or the big screen, but present in the best memories of a generation as an imperfect but genuine icon. Amanda's most memorable role is probably not on stage, but in her quiet journey to find peace. And though she chooses to live in peace, Amanda Bynes will forever be a part of the vibrant memories and profound lessons about courage, healing, and the right to step out of the spotlight when you need a break. Baywatch Nights was an extension that no one really expected, and the results showed. Airing from 1995 to 1997, the show originally started as a detective series with David Hasselhoff playing Mitch Buchanan, now a beach-going private eye working by night. It sounded intriguing, but then a bold decision changed everything. What if we brought the supernatural into the world of Baywatch? From its second season, the show moved into the X-Files territory with its bizarre storylines, from underwater monsters to aliens, from lost souls to supernatural nightmares. While Baywatch was associated with bright sunshine, blue seas, and classic slow motion, Baywatch Nights was immersed in darkness, fog, and stories that no one understood. The result? Audiences were confused, and ratings plummeted. But what was remarkable was the boldness of the series. This wasn't just a spin-off. It was an attempt to redefine an already well-known franchise. They weren't playing it safe. They were taking risks, literally. But the abrupt changes, coupled with a script lacking in irony and consistency, meant the show couldn't keep viewers engaged. The camp factor, the grotesque exaggeration was up, but it lacked the flair to make it a compelling highlight. And by 1997, Baywatch Nights had quietly disappeared, swallowed up by the nightmares it had created. Today, the show is remembered as a strange phenomenon in television history, a curious footnote in the career of David Hasselhoff. But beyond the failure, we see a project that was oddly courageous. It dared to go against the flow, to try things that no one else had dared to do. And even though it didn't succeed, Baywatch Nights is still an interesting example of how sometimes, amid chaos and risk, there is something to be appreciated. The courage to try things that no one else has done. The Hotel Baltimore was a show so bold it was far ahead of its time, a testament to the uncompromising vision of Norman Lear, the man behind such television milestones as All in the Family and Maude. Based on the play by Lanford Wilson, the series took place in a rundown hotel awaiting demolition, a last resort for society's forgotten. Prostitutes, undocumented immigrants, the elderly, the homeless, all sharing a crumbling yet still warm roof. What set the Hotel Baltimore apart was its fearlessness. While much television at the time only touched lightly on social issues, this show went straight for it. Sex, poverty, racism, homosexuality. No background laughs, no gloss. Just honest dialogue and unvarnished life. Some critics called it groundbreaking. Others thought it was too gritty, too raw to reach the masses. And this time, Lear may have gone too far beyond what television was willing to accept. After just 13 episodes, with modest ratings and a number of affiliates protesting, ABC pulled the plug. The Hotel Baltimore quietly disappeared from prime time. But it did not disappear from the memories of those who watched it. Despite its brevity, the show raised an important question. Can television honestly reflect the lives of marginalized people? And if so, is anyone willing to listen? Today, the work is rarely mentioned, but for those who know, it remains an uncomfortable reminder that the truth, while necessary, is sometimes unwelcome on television. And sometimes the courage to tell the truth can make a work legendary, in silence. The Secret World of Alex Mack isn't just a story about superpowers. It's an emotional journey of coming of age, wrapped in a fantasy so intimate that it makes you believe it could happen to you. Alex Mack isn't a flashy superhero. She doesn't wear a cape. She doesn't fight for fame. She's a regular teenager, riding home from school on a skateboard, wearing a bucket hat and a denim jacket, until a chemical accident completely changes her world. She can move objects with her mind, emit electricity from her fingertips, and melt into liquid. But instead of using her powers to take center stage, Alex must hide, living in fear of being discovered and hunted. The film doesn't paint a world where superpowers are a privilege. It's a heavy secret, one that leaves those with them feeling more alone than ever. Between homework, friends, and parents who can't understand her, Alex must deal with the emotional and physical turmoil that's spiraling out of control. It's that contradiction that makes the show so enduring. It doesn't say that being different is a bad thing, but it also doesn't pretend that it's easy. Alex Mack is a reflection of millions of teens who have felt out of place, trying to hide parts of themselves for fear of being hurt, misunderstood, or rejected. She's not perfect, but that's what makes her relatable and lovable. Spanning 4 seasons, The Secret World of Alex Mack leaves behind not just a fantastical story, but an emotional legacy. Those who grew up watching the show still wonder, what happened to Alex after that? Is there still magic hidden in the midst of ordinary life? And is it possible that sometimes feeling different is the greatest gift we can ever receive? Lisa Jakob has always been the kind of person audiences can trust, not with bombast, but with quiet honesty. From the sharp but sensitive daughter in Mrs. Doubtfire to the frightened teenager in Independence Day, Lisa doesn't need to shout to be noticed. She has a depth of presence, a presence rarely seen in a teenager, and that makes her characters always real, sympathetic, and likable. But it's often the most real people who feel the cracks first. Lisa's exit from Hollywood wasn't a sensational shock or a sought-after scandal. It was a gentle but decisive rejection that she was no longer willing to compromise herself to pursue an image that was no longer hers. At just 14, Lisa was rejected by her school because of her demanding filming schedule. Even Robin Williams, her close co-star, wrote to defend her, but the system wouldn't budge. For Lisa, the message was clear. If she wanted to continue acting, she had to sacrifice herself. And she didn't. Lisa left the spotlight to embark on a quiet journey of healing, writing, and finding herself. She didn't stay silent about the damage the entertainment industry had done to children like her. In her memoir, You Look Like That Girl, Lisa tells her story not with regret, but with gratitude for having the courage to leave when she did. She doesn't shy away from the painful things, but uses them to light a new path. No longer in front of the camera, Lisa's voice on every page is now deeper and more enduring than ever. Lisa Jakob didn't disappear. She just changed direction. And in that silence, she found her strongest voice, a gentle reminder that sometimes letting go isn't about leaving, it's about coming back. The Texas Wheelers is a rare gem in the television pantheon, a no-nonsense, no-frills, yet heartbreakingly honest sitcom. Airing for just 4 episodes in 1974, the show follows Zach Wheeler, a widower played by Jack Elam, as he struggles to raise 4 children in rural Texas after a long absence. There are no big laughs or dramatic situations. The show is a collection of everyday moments, sometimes awkward, sometimes heartbreakingly plain. Mark Hamill, in a small but memorable role before his turn as Luke Skywalker, brings an innocence and authenticity that can't be forced. But even the presence of a future star isn't enough to hold the show together. At the time, TV audiences were looking for easy laughs, lighter, more digestible plots. The Texas Wheelers, on the other hand, chose to sit down with you, whispering a story about awkward people trying to love, bond, and overcome everyday difficulties. The film does not try to make you laugh, but rather evokes empathy. The silence between lines seems to say more than words. Instead of mechanical laughter, you receive sympathetic nods, meaningful moments of silence. And perhaps it is this simplicity that makes the film unable to last long on screen, because it does not hit the trend, but goes against the hurried rhythm of television at that time. However, those who have watched it will never forget the quiet warmth that the show leaves behind. A feeling that is difficult to name, like nostalgia for the countryside on a windy afternoon, or the eyes of a father who does not know what to say to his child, but still sits there, not leaving. The Texas Wheelers may have been stopped short, but each short episode still holds a genuine sincerity that time has only made more precious. Marty Feldman is one of those faces you can never forget. His signature bulging eyes, wry sense of humor, and unconventional style made him a one-of-a-kind phenomenon. Already a star in Britain, Feldman brought that rebellious spirit to America with the Marty Feldman Comedy Machine, a sketch comedy show that defied all television conventions of the time. The show was a roller coaster of absurdity, breakneck pacing, bizarre skits, stop-motion animation, and experimental music. One moment, Feldman was a ballet-dressed dictator, another he was playing chess with a chicken, all done with a commitment to the kind of surreal comedy that few artists dared to pursue. For Monty Python fans, it was familiar ground, but for American audiences in the early 1970s, it was unfamiliar and uncharted territory. Despite the show's huge budget and creative ambition, cultural distance and skepticism from networks kept it from going far. Comedy Machine lasted only one season, not for lack of talent, but because it strayed too far from what audiences considered safe at the time. Yet it was precisely that daring that made the show such a special testament to the beauty of daring, to artistic courage, and to the risks that are sometimes necessary to push boundaries. Marty Feldman then went on to make his mark on the big screen, most notably as Igor in Young Frankenstein, where he continued to breathe life into every scene. But the Marty Feldman Comedy Machine remains a memorable piece, a brief, brilliant, but not forgotten explosion. If Marty ever made you laugh or wonder, leave a comment below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to discover more hidden gems in television history.